Joining us now on the John Fredericks Radio Network, Tom Homan. Tom has been on my show before. I saw him many times at the press briefing room, at the Brady Room, at the White House. He's former acting director of ICE. Tom Homan, great to have you back, man.
Great to be back. I appreciate it.
Hey, Tom, I want to talk about the shooting death of the Trump supporter by Antifa and BLM, or whoever was involved in that, in Portland. Mayor Wheeler and the district attorney there, Schmidt, did a press conference yesterday. They pointed the finger to blame of President Trump in the death of Jay Bishop. What the hell does President Trump have to do with somebody getting shot in a city that's been under siege for 90 days?
He doesn't. You can't place the fault on the guy sitting in the White House who's offered them unlimited assistance, and they turned it down. So they might have prevented this tragedy if they would have taken the assistance President Trump offered them from the beginning. And Ted Willis, well, the violence didn't happen until Trump got, the Trump resources got here, when they sent the guys to protect the courthouse. But we all know differently. They declared 16 riots before the federal resources even got there. They said it would stop when they left, and it didn't. It's gotten worse. So Ted Wheeler and the governor of that state have been wrong from day one. It's not President's fault. And Joe Biden said it the other day, too, that President Trump's blamed for all this violence. Well, if Joe Biden really believes that, which it's just a bunch of crap, if he really believes that, then he needs to own Sandy Hook with all those children that were murdered. He needs to own the Orlando nightclub shooting where 56 people died. He needs to own the Ferguson riots that happened. So, Joe Biden to call this a president's fault is just crazy. We all see what's happening. It's happening because the Democratic mayors and governors in these cities do not want to support law enforcement. If they let law enforcement do their job and give them the resources to do it, we can end it. If I was important, if the president was semi important, I'd have zero tolerance. You stay 1 minute past curfew, you're going to jail. You put a hand on a cop, you're going to jail. You light a match, you're going to jail. But the prosecutor needs to prosecute these disorderly conducts and curfew violations. There has to be consequences. There has to be a system of deterrence to stop bad behavior. Because these folks will just keep going out doing it every night. They know they're not going to be arrested, go back to their mother's basement, sleep it off, and wait for the next stimulus check because they don't have jobs.
Well, Tom, let me ask you this. By the way, just so everybody knows, Tom's author of a new book just out called Defend the Borders and Save Lives. Defend the Borders and Save Lives. You can get that at Amazon or your favorite bookstore. Defend the Borders and Save Lives is a new book. Tom, let me just ask you this. So if you were there and the president set in, like he did, the federal troops to protect the courthouse, but on what authority do you have to arrest people? Do you have that authority? And, where would they go? To their jail? Because they'll just get let out immediately. So how does that work? Explain.
Here's
walk us through
what the president's doing. When he said the federal agents there to protect the courthouse, that is in statute, was Title 42, clearly states that the Secretary of Homeland Security has a responsibility that he will, not maybe, not can, he will protect federal property and federal employees within that property. And that's exactly what President Trump did. But they can also, anybody's going to try to hurt any employee or hurt that property and run away, they can certainly give chase and arrest them. And look, here's the difference. When the federal agents arrest you, you're not going to go through a weak county prosecutor who sides with the left. You're going to go in U.S. Marshal's custody. There's no bail reform issue there, not like New York. You're going to go in the federal system, which is a much more serious system. So that's what happens with the federal agents. Look, many of these U.S. Marshals can certainly deputize ICE agents and Border Patrol agents, and local police departments can also deputize them for, a lot of these states, the federal agents ask for peace officers and can enforce the law. It depends on what state and what city, but they certainly can add to protect life and property, which, look, these police departments can do it. They're willing to do it. They want to do it, but the politicians have tied their hands. They take their tear gas away. They take their rubber bullets away. They take all their less than lethal instruments away from them. They tie their hands. And like New York City, de Blasio told them to stand by, let them get out of their system, watch the looting occur. That is not the way this nation is built. That's not the way law enforcement works. If someone violates the law, arrest them. And that's why The American people need to pay attention to what's going on. Every law enforcement agency in the country that is endorsed, somebody has endorsed President Trump, because they know he stands behind law enforcement. He stands behind law and order, where Joe Biden doesn't. He hasn't said a word about the violence until the polls showed it's hurting him. So for 3 months, he said nothing about the looting, the murder, the mayhem, until the polls showed, hey, this is hurting you. All of a sudden, now he's concerned. So the American people, hopefully, are smart enough. He's concerned about his vote, not the safety of the American communities.
Hypocrisy is beyond the pale. Tom Homan with us, former acting director of ICE with us, Tom Homan. The murder of this fellow, a Trump supporter, in Portland by, I guess now the fingers are being pointed at a member of Antifa. Are these people going to get prosecuted? Like, how does that work there?
So you're right. The president and William Barr, the president has told William Barr he wants all this investigated. He wants to know who's financing it, who's coordinating all these things across the country. I think, look, this isn't a coincidence. This is being well coordinated, well financed by somebody. And the Department of Justice, specifically the Bureau of FBI, are investigating. And they're in the middle of several large-scale investigations. I know some things, but I can't share that on open air. But right. I think once they identify who financed this, who coordinated this, and hold them responsible, just not criminally, but civilly. So you got people that are funding this. I think the people who lost their businesses, people who have been injured or lost their lives, need to civilly sue this person. Not only the government charge them a crime, but they ought to be civilly liable. I think that's going to pull the blanket on this whole movement. You can find out this is nothing but political activism. They want chaos in these cities because for some odd reason they think it's going to help defeat President Trump in November. But I think the people are smarter than that. The people see President Trump's trying to help them, they're refusing help. And why are they refusing to help? Because they don't want President Trump, who they hate, bailing them out of trouble and fixing their problem, because that's going to help him win the re-election. This is all politics, and it's a sad day in America when they put politics ahead of safety and security of the people they're supposed to be protecting, the people who pay taxes to be protected in that city.
Tom, I want to get to the funding aspect of this without sharing anything that you're unable to talk about on open air. But when you talk about the funding, I mean, we haven't really thought about that up until a couple of days ago when a few people started bringing it up, like who's funding this stuff. You look at the riots going on in Oregon, in Portland, Oregon. It's been 90 days. A lot of these people are not from there, so they're staying in hotels. A lot of people, how did they get there? So when you talk about funding, I mean, is there a group that's actually like paying money, or when you say funding, like what, giving them money or putting them up in hotels? How would that even work?
Well, there are people that are financing the travel of these people, and people are financing some of the things. Look, a pallet of bricks just don't show up in the middle of the neighborhood to be used as weapons at night. Someone paid for that pallet of bricks. I don't know if you've ever done brick work, but pallet of bricks is pretty damn expensive. Someone's paying for this travel. Look, I had 80 protesters in front of my house on a Sunday morning. I had all these signs and, protesting me. Now, where did they get the money to travel down to my home? Where did they get the money to build these signs? And I mean, some of this stuff, if you look at some of these riots and protests, they got some sophisticated weapons, whether it's fireworks or lasers. But what I'm specifically talking about is the coordination travel. A lot of these people are from out of state. There's somebody coordinating this effort, and they don't have to fund the effort to be held accountable. If they're conspiring to commit mayhem and criminal conduct, then they're just as guilty as the person that burned the building down. So I think you're going to hear real soon from the Bureau that they're going to start arresting and charging people for coordinating financing this mayhem across the country. And I think it's going to be a great day for America when that happens, because that's going to pull the curtain back on who's behind it all, what politicians are in the know, what politicians aren't. I think it's going to be really eye-opening.
Well, the way this has been sold to the American public by the legacy fake news media and the Democrats is these are organic protests that sprung up over George Floyd, and people upset about systemic racism, and they want social justice reform. They want reform in policing, and that's the way this is being sold to us. Is these were all organic. They just spread up for a cause. And what you're saying here is these have been financed by somebody or some group. These have been financed in order to seed and sow chaos in the streets. And flood the zone with crisis after crisis to essentially defeat the incumbent. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, you did. I can't say every one of these things have been financed and coordinated, but a majority of them have been. We know that. We can see the coordination efforts in play. So they're not organic, and this isn't about George Floyd. It's never been about George Floyd, because if people are out there protesting, the lawful protesters want to go and march in the streets and support Black Lives Matter. They have that right. That's their constitutional right. But these rioters, the ones that are burning buildings down and attacking police officers, look, let's not forget we've had several police officers killed too. Where there's Underwood or David Underwood, who worked for FPS, and was these two men were killed just for guarding a building. So this is sophisticated, coordinated, and it's not organic. It's not about George Floyd, because you commit violence when you burn something down, when you attack somebody. This isn't about George Floyd anymore. You've lost that message. This is about violence.
John Fredericks Radio Network, Trucking the Truth Across America. We're with Tom Homan. Tom is the former acting director of ICE. And Tom, also the author of a new book, Defend the Borders and Save Lives. Tom, let's get through Kenosha, the 17-year-old that is now up on charges of first-degree murder, having shot two black people and maiming one, shooting at him in the shoulder. There's been a discussion as to what exactly happened there. And my position has been, number one, he's 17. He shouldn't have been there at night with a gun. As far as I'm concerned, he's a minor child. If he was my son, he would not have been there after dark. But having said that, this whole argument about outside people coming in to defend property, how do you feel about that, Tom, in general?
I generally feel a person has the right to protect his property, but unfortunately, this person wasn't out protecting his property. I think,
right.
Look, the left is sown hatred. They can say President Trump is sown hatred, but look, they're burning businesses down. Had nothing to do with George Floyd. Mm-hmm. They're hurting police officers. Look, remember after 9/11, we were told don't judge all Muslims by the act of a few, but they want to judge all cops by the action of one. It's just ridiculous, and the hatred being sown by the left. They're the one dividing this country. They're the ones demanding that you kneel and you say their name. And I think some people are just getting sick and tired of it and taking actions in their own hands, which is unfortunate. I do not believe you have the right to protect your life, you got the right to protect your family and your property. But I don't support people going out and playing police officer. When I was head of ICE, we had a militia that went down and work on the border and assist the border patrol and carry guns and stop people entering the country. I think that's a step too far. I think not only is it a civil issue, it can turn into a criminal issue, and we don't need blue on blue, shootings and mayhem down there. So I say the same thing in the cities. I think what needs to happen, the mayors and governments need to tell the police officers, you will now enforce law to the fullest extent of law. Do your job. Here's a resource that you requested and you need, we'll give them to you. Rather than defunding you and taking money away from you, we're going to give you more money to buy the equipment you need to shut this rioting down. And when the President of the United States offers you very well-trained special agents who went to a police academy also, they know what the Fourth Amendment says, they've studied the Fourth Amendment, they know when to arrest and when to search. You send these highly trained federal agents not only to help enforce the law, but help conduct criminal investigations. You get the FBI and HSI, the Division of ICE, who know how to chase the money. They know how to investigate these large criminal organizations by following the money. Let these federal agents come in, not just help you protect property, but to conduct criminal investigations. That's the way to go about it, not citizens, gathering up arms and going on the street to fight people who they don't agree with. Again, I want to be perfectly clear. You have a right to protect your home. You have a right to protect yourself and your family, but to grab a gun, go out in the street, and try to be the police, I just think that's a bad recipe.
I agree with you 100%. I've been saying that all week. I don't think there's a place for vigilantism. I think it just adds fuel to the fire. And it's one thing, Tom, you're 100% correct. It's one thing if you're protecting your neighborhood or you're protecting your own business, or five of your friends in the neighborhood go to protect your business or home. That's one thing. You live there. It's another thing to come in from Antioch, 30 miles away, or wherever they came. You want to wash graffiti off walls. Great. You want to clean the sidewalk. Great. But you shouldn't be coming there with a gun because you were invited by some group. It's just a bad idea. One thing I want to correct. I got a text here. I said that the two people who died were African Americans. Nick from Virginia Beach corrected me, said they were white. So I'm sorry, I misspoke there, Nick, and thanks for the correction on that. But Tom, I mean, the whole thing though, if you have police and you can call them and they can protect you, there's no need for anybody from the outside to come in, right? So the real problem is we've handcuffed the cops. There's not enough of them. They can't do their job, and so therefore we get a powder keg situation, right?
Oh, absolutely. Like the police, the morale in the police department is at an all-time low. I mean, you got people that are spitting on and pushing, waiting for them to react. Just like after the president gave a speech at the White House and the people left the White House property, these anarchists were pushing and shoving, Republican congressional leaders and even Dan Bongino from Fox News and his wife were, approached. They want a response. They want to, upset you so much that you're going to respond. And of course, that will be on video and that will be all over social media. The police officers are operating and with all cameras on them. They're not allowed to react to the hate and to the attacks. And some of these mayors have taken very valuable tools away from, like you can't use tear gas, you can't use pepper spray, and won't defund you. We're going to take all this money away from you, which means you got less police officers out there doing the job. And I've said ever since the defund the police has started, every dollar you take away from law enforcement means less enforcement, whether it's less officers on the street, less patrol cars, less overtime, less money for Title III undercover investigations, whatever. I had a $7 billion budget, and there's certain things I could do with that money and certain things I didn't have enough money to do. So you got to pick and choose. So defunding the police is not the answer. It's supporting the police is the answer. These are men and women who don't make a lot of money. They leave the safety and security of their home every day to defend people they don't know, people they'll never meet, even people that despise them. Let them do the job they're trained to do. Let them enforce the laws that were enacted either by your state legislator or the federal legislature. Let them do their jobs, and we can fix this. The problem is the politicians won't allow it. And President Trump is sitting, you're not going to do it, I'm going to. And so God bless him. I think we've got the right guy in the White House that wants to fix this.
Tom, I tell you what, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing that perspective, and I think you're spot on. And everything right now is moving the president's way. I think people are saying action, action, action. He's doing the right thing, and I think he sees the narrative. When you turn on the TV at night, Tom, and you see these kind of riots and the protesters, looters driving trucks into sneaker stores and just cleaning them out, people renting trucks where they're looting, destroying property. You saw the one video the other day of a man hitting some other man over the head with a brick in Baltimore City for no reason, just because he was white. I mean, people are seeing this stuff, and it's not helping Biden. It really is, because he can't get control of it.
And it's not helpful. You got politicians out there like AOC saying, well, they're out there because they're hungry and they don't have jobs. They need to feed their families. Well, I didn't know they made sandwiches at Macy's. I didn't know they had food in Nike store where people are stealing $200 pair of sneakers. This has, she's a moron. This has nothing to do about people not eating. This is people taking advantage of a situation, a crisis, and they're going to commit crime. And that's why the police need a full force, zero tolerance. Zero tolerance. You step over the line, you go to jail, you get prosecuted. And that's the way we want to solve this issue. It's a system of consequence and returns. That's why there's laws. That's why there's law enforcement. And that's why you and I don't go 100 miles an hour down the freeway. We're afraid we're going to get a ticket. That's why we don't lie in our taxes. We're afraid we'll get audited and put in jail. That is why there's a system of laws. These people need to fear the thought of being arrested and sitting in a jail cell. But right now they don't fear that, because you got mayors that don't let police officers do their job, and you got the prosecutor in Portland who don't want to prosecute. We had a prosecutor outside of Portland volunteer to be in a protest and stop two ICE transportation vehicles from leaving for almost 12 hours. The county prosecutor was there with the protesters, preventing ICE from doing their job, impeding federal law enforcement. As a prosecutor, I said he ought to immediately resign, because they had criminals in that man, the people in the country that committed crime community. So ICE was protecting their community, taking public safety threats out of their community. You would think that prosecutor would thank them for helping him do his job, which is to protect the community. But he didn't. He stood with the protesters. That shows you how out of touch a lot of these people, regardless if they're a mayor or a prosecutor, they're not doing their job, and they're not letting the professionals do their job, and that's what this all comes down to.
Tom Homan, thanks for being with us today. Read Tom's book, Defend the Borders and Save Lives. You can get it on Amazon, Defend the Borders and Save Lives. Tom Homan, thanks for being with us. Again, great to have you back.
Appreciate it.